Good evening and welcome to this conversation with the joint opposition political parties. My name is Christopher M. Now, following revelations in the New York courts linking the government of Guyana to the killings of scores of Guyanese, consistent denials by those in the government who were implicated, the opposition political parties have been holding a series of conversations with the aim of getting an international commission of inquiry to investigate into these allegations. The first such conversation was held at City Hall in Georgetown, followed by one in Linden. We have representatives of 5 of the parties. You will identify them as we go on. I will move immediately into my first question. Why is this issue, the issue involving Roger Khan, Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, the government of Guyana, regarded with such seriousness and urgency as to warrant an immediate international commission of inquiry?
But I see you looking at me, Chris. I think for several reasons, but perhaps the most important, that it betrays the fact that we've developed a point in time in which the government is very closely allied with organized crime and has engaged in the execution and/or responsibility for the execution of not scores, as you said, but hundreds of Guyanese over the past few years. I think that this is an intolerable situation and therefore demands that we take joint action in it. I can't imagine that in any self-respecting democracy this will be allowed to happen. And my concern is that it's not happening out of the blue, but it's coming in the context of previous abuses involving torture, involving the heavy-handed behavior of the police and the security services against citizens of Guyana, arbitrary arrest, all sorts of uncivilized conduct, violating the Human Rights Convention to which we have signed, and is responsible now for what we are in.
I would add to that by saying that the reason for the international inquiry is the fact that we are not confident that the Jaguar administration would at all allow a normal inquiry to be held in Guyana. And this can be gleaned for the pattern of behavior which they've exhibited over the past few years. Even in the case of Ronald Gadraj, who eventually himself asked for an inquiry, the terms of reference of that inquiry did not allow for a proper investigation in the criminal activity on the East Coast, which was the demand of the joint parliamentary parties at that time. So that there is no confidence that any local inquiry will be objective, nor will there be any willingness on the part of the Jaguar administration to allow such an impartial inquiry to be held here. I should also conclude in that aspect by saying that insofar as the Simmons trial is concerned, it is the first time that we have had living witnesses who have been able to present their evidence in a court of law, and it is perhaps a watershed in that it provides an opportunity for us to present to that international tribunal evidence that was available to the people of Guyana and indeed the Guyana police force for some time, and on which they failed to act.
Maybe I could, in support of what has been said already, but a third dimension, and that is from the international jurist position. And in international law, there's the theory of state recognition, state legitimacy, and all of these aspects that we hear about of the criminalization of the state has an impact in Guyana. No respect for the rule of law, the disregard for judges' decisions, the ranking of the executive above everything else, etc. And what we're seeing is, in a sense, the general breakdown of the state and the legitimacy of the state. And so there are repercussions within Guyana, and if Guyana considers itself to be a member of a body or society of nations, subscribing to the tenets of international law, as you know, prescribed by the UN and other international organizations, we must be able to comply, and therefore bringing an international aspect to the investigation is going to help, I believe, notwithstanding the fact that the Jagyo regime has done this to Guyana. It is in our best interest as Guyanese, and those of us who wish to remain here and those who, though not resident in Guyana, but still are interested, to see this nation restored to some level of legitimacy, both nationally and internationally. So I'd like to add that third dimension to why why an inquiry, one, and two, why it should have an international flavor element to it.
And I'd just simply like to state that we need to cleanse ourselves of a period and go through this. The investigation would help us heal, because at the end of all of this, if we are to remain a nation, we have to go through this process and face the fact that we collectively made some mistakes, and the government has a responsibility, this particular government has a responsibility to face the fact that mistakes were made, and the nation would not move forward unless we so do. I think for our own sanity and for us to be called a nation, I think it is important that we face some of the bad things that have happened, and bad things have taken place in this country.
Mr. Scott, Keith Scott, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think everything has been covered here. Unless you want to, I want to add one little point, is that the legitimacy of the rule of law was brought into sharp focus when Janet Jagan, through the summons was served on her over her shoulder. If you look at it from that day onwards, there has been a systematic rejection of all things legal in this country from the level of the government. The point is that the society no longer has faith in the power of the judiciary to enforce whatever orders they want to set. Hence, we feel that take into consideration the watering down of the Gadraj inquiry in terms of reference, and the fact that this government has not shown enough respect for the rule of law. Internationalization of an inquiry gives us a certain legitimacy, and in terms of that we can now have some faith that justice can be served with an inquiry that is international.
Mr. Raphael Trotman, the leader of the AFC, you just raised this issue about international relations. We are calling for an international commission of inquiry. What if, because of state to state and state conduct, what is the likelihood of a positive response from the international community?
Maybe I should follow up by saying that there is precedent. Under the Forbes Boredom administration, the International Commission of Jurists was invited into Guyana to review the workings of the police force vis-a-vis how ethnic issues affected the effectiveness of the police force. This would be in the late 1960s. So it is not unprecedented, but it first must come from a request by this government of one of the international bodies of which we are a member, asking for an investigation. But indeed, you are right. It is hardly likely that an investigation of the kind that we want will take place if there's not some request made. And so part of our effort has to be to force the government, as was done with the Gadraj investigation, to agree. And so merely asking for it is not going to be enough. We have to be able to compel it and to have the government agree that unless this inquiry is held in the manner in which it should be held, things will not be business as usual. It will not be, okay.
It may be, Chris, because I'm not a lawyer, but I'm wondering if that is really the correct legal position. Because my feeling is that once we have signed on to a number of international obligations, and we signed on to, I think about at least 10 of them have been mentioned in the dossier which we're preparing, rising